Douglas was extremely dumbfounded upon hearing Zyla's remark. He asked, "What? Are you saying that Kenneth offended Master Wade?" "Yes," Zyla nodded profusely. "Moreover, I heard that it was quite an intense fight. He even flirted with Master Wade's wife, saying that he would give her $10 million just to spend a night with her." Douglas' face turned into a grimacing shade of red. He didn't expect that Kenneth had offended Master Wade to such an extent. Who did Kenneth think he was anyway? His mind ran wild with angry remarks. "Master Wade has helped me with the generosity and kindness that I can never repay. What about you, Kenneth?" "Yes, your father helped me back in the days, but I have already repaid my debt to the Wilson family for being your family doctor for several decades. Besides, your father has already passed on. I no longer have any obligation toward your family. I can still lend a hand to help you by all means if you had simply injured yourself, but you picked a fight with the wrong person. You offended Master Wade. Master Wade's enemy is my enemy." Douglas' expression was so dark, almost as if a thunderstorm was about to hit him. He walked toward Kenneth, which made Kenneth a little nervous. Before Kenneth could speak, Douglas started with a cold and emotionless tone. "Let me ask you something. Did you cause a scene with a guy by the name of Charlie Wade today?" Kenneth nodded honestly. "Oh, Uncle Simmons, do you know him? That fucking bastard humiliated me in public. Don't worry, he won't be alive for long. I'll kill him sooner or later." Douglas sneered contemptuously. He pointed to the door and shouted, "Get out of here now!" Kenneth was shocked. "What? Uncle Simmons, what's going on?" Douglas said in a stern voice. "Don't call me uncle. From now on, I cut all ties with you and your family, and I will have nothing to do with you anymore." Kenneth stood in a daze. Douglas was like the beacon of health and youth for him and his family. After all, it was easy to make money, but you couldn't buy health with all the money in the world. If he broke all ties with Douglas, he would be chided and punished when he returned to his home. More importantly, if he walked away now, he couldn't get the magical elixir that Douglas had promised him. What about his manhood? What about sexual pleasure and happiness for the rest of his life? He frantically asked, "Uncle Simmons, what the hell is going on? There must be some kind of misunderstanding." Douglas snorted. "Let me tell you this. Master Wade is not only my savior, but also the only true dragon in the world. Your disrespect and rudeness toward Master Wade are equivalent to slapping my own face. For your father's sake, I will spare your life, but get out of here right now, and don't you dare show up in front of me again." "Master? True dragon?" Kenneth blurted out in a shocked tone. "Uncle Simmons, is something wrong with your brain? How could you be deceived by that crook? He is not a master or a true dragon. He is just a useless live-in son-in-law, a moocher. The Wilson family that he is married to, they treat me like a king. They even gifted Wendy Wilson to me as my escort and companion. He is just a lowly ant compared to me." Then he continued in an indignant voice, "Uncle Simmons, do you honestly think that deadbeat loser is worth it for you to protect him with all costs and even cut ties with our family? Are you going to ignore the years of friendship between our families?" "Bastard!" Douglas' face twisted into a resentful grimace. He picked up the medicine pestle on the table and slammed it into Kenneth's head fiercely while cursing, "You and your blasphemous mouth! Get out of here right now!" Kenneth couldn't manage to avoid him, and the pestle knocked his forehead with a great force, causing it to swell up immediately. He gritted his teeth in pain and shouted, "Fuck you, you fucking old man! You believe in that crooked liar and you even dared to beat me! I'll fucking kill you!" He picked up a nearby chair and prepared to throw it at Douglas. Despite his age, Douglas was very lean and flexible. He had become even more agile, especially after Charlie had cured his old injuries with the magical elixir. His strength, speed, and stamina were incomparable to an obese, middle-aged man like Kenneth. Anthony twisted his body slightly and dodged the chair easily. After the first failed attempt, Kenneth picked up another chair in irritation and shouted, "Fucking old man, if you want to live, give me the pill right now. Otherwise, I'll kill you today. Asshole, how dare you beat my grandpa? Take this!" Zyla rolled up her sleeves in great anger and dashed toward Kenneth. It was normal for a family of traditional Chinese medical science to learn martial arts and self-defense. The Simmons family was not only a master of Chinese medicine, but also a family of martial arts. Even Zyla, who was not carrying her grandfather's last name, was very athletic and frisky, and so it was a piece of cake to defeat a large and slow man like Kenneth. Before Kenneth could respond to her war cry, Zyla kicked him, and he fell to the floor. Then she pressed her shoes against his throat and commanded coldly, "Get the hell out of here or I'll kick your ass!" Knowing that he was on the losing side, Kenneth hurriedly crawled out of the clinic while cursing, "Fuck you, you old man, just wait and see. I'll make you pay for what you did to me today." "Bastard," Douglas shouted angrily. "Get the hell out of here. I don't want to see you again." Kenneth fled the clinic as though he was running away from zombies, his face green from the shock and hatred. Christopher quickly greeted him and asked, "Kenneth, how is it? Has Dr. Simmons cured you?" Kenneth growled bitterly. "Ha! That ungrateful old fart said that he didn't want to treat me because I offended Charlie, his so-called savior. Not only that, he even beat me and kicked me out of there." Christopher didn't expect that a prominent figure like Douglas Simmons would be bewitched by Charlie, the deadbeat skunk. He sighed. "This Charlie is really going places." Kenneth shouted, "Just wait and see, all of them. Douglas Simmons, Charlie Wade, just wait and see. I'll bury them alive. I'll make them pay." Christopher had had enough of Charlie's attacks, but he had never had a chance nor the ability to seek revenge from him, so he had always been very frustrated and agitated. Besides, he was desperately envious of the Thompson First villa that Zeke White had given to him. If Kenneth could really kill Charlie as he claimed, his brother and his family would have nothing to rely on, and they would be like dying fishes on a chopping board. If so, the villa would eventually be his. Hence, he resisted the gleeful delight in his heart and hurriedly said, "Kenneth, you are absolutely right. Charlie Wade is an ungrateful bastard. Even after all those years of staying with us, he keeps bullying and insulting us. Now he even dares to bully you. He deserves every bit of payback and revenge from us." Indeed, Kenneth wanted to kill Charlie right there and then. However, he realized that it was not wise to act impulsively. The mighty dragon was no match for the native serpent. He knew clearly that he was no match to Charlie right now. It seemed that Charlie was quite powerful and strong, meaning that he had to be skilled in martial arts and self-defense. It was very hard to go after a man who was knowledgeable and tenacious. He had to get someone who was on par or more powerful than Charlie to go against him. Otherwise, it would all go down the drain. Still, the most important thing right now was to fix his impotence. He would be in living hell otherwise. Kenneth's wrath toward Douglas started burning again upon this thought. The fucking old coot. Clearly, he had a pill that could cure him, but he didn't want to give it to him. In fact, he had even kicked him out of his clinic for that loser, Charlie. Damn. Meanwhile, Christopher was worrying about Kenneth's situation. If he couldn't be fixed, what would happen to his daughter? Was it the end of their relationship? If so, how could he ascend to the pinnacle of his life? So far, they had only received $10 million of investment from Kenneth. It was still $70 million short of the $80 million that Kenneth had promised them in the first place. He doubted that Kenneth would give them the $70 million if his impotence persisted. Hence, he was even more anxious than Kenneth and hoped that he could restore the latter's sexual function. He cleared his throat and asked with concern, "Kenneth, since the old coot is so ignorant and foolish, do you want me to get a few people to beat him up and snatch the pill from him?" Kenneth waved his hand in irritation. "No, the old dog and his granddaughter are very strong. More importantly, he has a lot of VIP patients. We're asking for trouble if we go after him." Douglas Simmons was a renowned doctor in Chinese medicine. He was highly respected by many VIPs and wealthy families in Eastcliff and several other big cities. Although Kenneth was quite influential himself, he couldn't even make it into the top 30 of the most prominent figures that Douglas knew. Hence, he didn't dare to go against Douglas rashly. He could only try to find another way to cure his disorder. Suddenly, a person popped into his mind and he said to Christopher, "Oh yes, I have a friend who owns a pharmaceutical factory in Orris Hill. It is one of the top companies in the country, too. I'll contact him tomorrow." Christopher breathed a sigh of relief. "Wow, I'm glad to hear that. I'm really afraid that you can't recover." "Go to that pharmacy and buy me some Viagra." "Okay." Christopher parked his car on the roadside obediently, walked into the pharmacy as he was told, and bought a large box of Viagra for Kenneth. Kenneth said quickly, "Let's go home now. I want to try it with Wendy." There was a tinge of awkwardness on Christopher's face. Kenneth had literally blurted out in front of him that he wanted to try the effects of Viagra with his daughter. However, since they had already done the deed, there was no point in being upset and annoyed by it. So, he spruced up his feelings and drove home quickly. Serene World Clinic. Douglas was still huffing and puffing in annoyance. 2 people had come to his clinic tonight asking for treatment, and they both had offended Master Wade. Jason Grant, the guy who had tried to show off before Master Wade at the hospital the other day that led him to an unfortunate ending. Orville threw him out of the window on the 3rd floor and broke his leg. He even had the guts to come here to seek treatment. And then there was Kenneth Wilson, the most hateful and shameless bastard. He had nearly given that bastard the magical elixir before learning about his beef with Master Wade. If he had really cured Kenneth, he would be biting the hand that fed him, wouldn't he? He turned to Zyla and sighed. "Oh my goodness, Zyla, luckily you got here in time, otherwise I might have already given Kenneth the magical pill." Zyla shuddered at the thought. "Grandpa, I heard that Master Wade was the reason why Kenneth is impotent." "Oh, I see." Douglas mesmerized in awe. "Master Wade is truly powerful, seeing as he could destroy the penile nerve secretly. Even the best surgeons cannot be so precise in manually removing the nerves. He deserves it for what he did to Master Wade." Then, Zyla added, "Grandpa, I think you'd better make your stand with the Wilson family. If Master Wade somehow learns about our relationship with their family and misunderstands you, it will not do any good to us." "You're right," Douglas nodded. "I'll call Mrs. Wilson right away and explain everything to her." Next, Douglas took out his phone and called Barbara, Kenneth's mother. Barbara Wilson was 83 years old this year. There was a Chinese saying that went, "Reaching the age of 73 or 84, you will go to hell even if the Grim Reaper doesn't invite you." It meant that there would be 2 major obstacles of the elderly, which were at the age of 73 and 84. They were most likely to be rather weak and fragile, which might lead to death. The legends that paired with the saying were the 2 great saints in ancient China. Confucius passed away at the age of 73. Mencius passed away at the age of 84. Even the sages like Confucius and Mencius couldn't escape from the curse of 73 and 84, let alone normal people. Thus, these 2 numbers were regarded as the critical junctures of life. On Barbara's first major hurdle, she had suffered a serious illness when she was 73 years old. At the time, Douglas had rushed to Eastcliff and prescribed 9 different drugs to her, managing to keep her alive and kicking. This time, as she was approaching her second major hurdle, she knew that the hurdle would come at a devastating speed and strength. It might be even more dangerous due to her age. Therefore, she hoped that she could invite Douglas over before her birthday this year. Thus, when she received Douglas' call, she sounded delighted and joyful. "Douglas, I was just about to call you. It will be my 84th birthday next month. Are you free? I would like to invite you to my birthday banquet. What do you think?" Douglas knew very well that Barbara was going to have her second hurdle this year. If it weren't for what had happened today, he would have gone there uninvited before her birthday and personally taken care of her so that she could live safely to her 90s. However, he couldn't go anymore because of Kenneth's offenses toward Master Wade. Besides, he had already repaid enough of their favors for all these years of services. He cleared his throat and said flatly, "Barbara, for all these years, I've been treating and caring for the Wilson family. I think I've repaid enough favor of your husband's kindness toward me. Therefore, from now on, I want to cut ties with your family." Barbara gaped in utter shock and asked frantically, "What? Douglas, what are you talking about? We've been friends for so many years. How could you cut ties with us just like that?" Douglas' serious voice sounded, "Barbara, I am very grateful for Brother Wilson's help. When I needed it the most, he was a friend indeed, and I've repaid the favors to your family for so many years without asking for anything in return. Gratitude and consideration are my principles, you know that, right?" "Of course," Barbara answered. "But I don't understand. Why do you want to make a clean break with us all of a sudden? If it's my mistake, tell me. I'll correct it." "No, Barbara, it's not your fault. Actually, it's your son, Kenneth." "Kenneth?" Barbara said in surprise. "What about him? Did he offend you? But he's in Orris Hill right now." "Yes, I'm in Orris Hill too," Douglas said earnestly, "and I saw Kenneth. To be honest, he didn't do anything to me, but he offended my savior. The man is very important to me, so much so that I owe him my life. So for the sake of gratitude to my savior, I have to draw a line with the Wilson family. Sorry." Barbara's heart skipped a beat in panic. Oh dear, had her son actually enraged Douglas in Oris Hill? That bastard! Douglas was a well-known Chinese medicine master in the country that was famously acquired among the prominent figures for his service. In fact, there was a saying that circulated in the social circle of dignitaries in Eastcliff that went Douglas Simmons can outsmart the Grim Reaper and extend your life. It meant that as long as Douglas took the shot, even a dying person could live for a long while. This was simply a dream for the rich and powerful. Stanley Ho, the Macau billionaire businessman, had spent millions of dollars on his medical bills alone to extend his life using various high-tech methods. To him, life was more precious than his money. What could you do if you had a hefty wealth, but your life was coming to an end? You would end up the same as the rest of the people, laying in the wooden coffin and buried 6 feet under. Hence, the more powerful and rich a person was, the more desperately he yearned for Douglas. All the rich and powerful in Eastcliff were envious of the Wilson family due to their close friendship with Douglas. It would be a very difficult task to seek treatment from Douglas no matter how much they were willing to spend. But due to their acquaintance with Douglas, he would visit the Wilson family annually for a medical checkup and treatment. Barbara's husband, Kenneth's father, had been diagnosed with cancer a decade ago. Thanks to Douglas' effortless care and treatment, his life was prolonged for a few more years, and he had only passed away last year at the age of 86. Barbara hoped that she could live to her 90s or even over 100 years old with the help and support from Douglas, but instead, she received the bad news that knocked her socks off. She frantically pleaded, "Douglas, please, I beg you, please don't lower yourself to Kenneth's level and be offended by him. He is your junior, after all. I hope you can forgive him for whatever he did you wrong by. I'll call him later and teach him a lesson. Then I'll ask him to apologize to you." Douglas cut in flatly, "Never mind, Barbara. It doesn't matter. If I'm the one whom he offended, I can surely forgive him. But no, he messed with the wrong person. He offended my savior. So, this is the end of the conversation. I won't change my mind. I wish you good health and a long life. Goodbye." Douglas ended the call immediately, switched off his phone, and said, "Zyla, lock the door. Let's go back to the hotel." Meanwhile, Kenneth and Christopher were on the way back to the Wilson family villa. Kenneth rushed to the living room as soon as they returned to the villa, poured himself a glass of water, took out the Viagra, read the instructions, and asked, "So, one at a time?" Lady Wilson blushed timidly when she saw him directly taking out the medicine. Hannah even looked to the other side out of awkwardness. Wendy, on the other hand, was a little excited. Kenneth had been very cold and distant to her ever since he had become impotent. Wendy no longer got any pocket money from Kenneth, nor did he mention anything about the rest of the investment anymore. From the looks of it, it seemed that she would get more monetary benefits from him only if she helped him regain his manhood quickly. Otherwise, Kenneth would unquestionably abandon her and the entire family. So far, the $10 million that Kenneth provided was only enough to stabilize the current chaos in the Wilson Group. It was far from enough to bring the company back to its peak. Christopher stood beside Kenneth and said, "One pill at a time will do. It has a very powerful effect." Kenneth nodded. Then he took out 3 pills and swallowed them. He grabbed Wendy's hand and urged her, "Wendy, let's go upstairs now." He hoped that this medicine would work wonders. Wendy quickly nodded. She wrapped her arms around Kenneth's and said coyly, "Dear, let's go back to our room and try again." Kenneth pulled Wendy back into the room. Then, they started the foreplay. Wendy tried the best she could to help him achieve pleasure and find his manhood. Unfortunately, no matter what tricks Wendy tried on him, it still didn't work. Frustrated, Kenneth swallowed 3 more pills, but he didn't feel the sensation that it suggested. He felt nothing. His mood slumped to the lowest point at this moment. Seeing Wendy still wriggling and squirming on him, he kicked her off the bed in annoyance and shouted, "I don't need you anymore, get lost!" Wendy was afraid that Kenneth would hit her, so she quickly said, "Dear, calm down. I'm sure we can find a way to cure you soon." "Ah, get lost!" Kenneth growled fiercely and threw a pillow directly at her. Not wanting to enrage him further, Wendy quickly wrapped her clothes around herself and ran out of the room. Kenneth lay on the bed alone, huffing and puffing in agitation. When a man successfully reached the pinnacle of his life, his most desirable dream was to have countless gorgeous women surrounding him, living the best life possible. Alas, impotence had literally ended it all. What was the use of having these women with him? No, he couldn't accept this fate. Just when he was still wallowing in resentment, his phone rang. It was his mother. He hurriedly answered the call humbly. "Hello, Mother. Why are you up so late?" Barbara's furious voice echoed from the other end of the line. "You brat! What did you do? Are you trying to kill me? Do you want me dead at the age of 84? Mom, what are you talking about? Why would I want to kill you?" "Ah, you nasty bastard!" Barbara shouted. "Let me ask you, why did you offend Douglas Simmons? He wants to cut ties with our family. Do you know that? Do you know how much it will cost our family?" Kenneth shivered in shock from his mother's ferocious remark. Just because he had caused a scene with Charlie, not only did Douglas not want to help him, but he wanted to cut ties with his whole family too? What kind of drug had Charlie fed him that he was so mesmerized and bewitched by him? Agitated and enraged, Kenneth suppressed his emotions and said, "Mom, that old coot is unreliable. He's a crook." Barbara shouted angrily, "I don't care what you do, but you'd better bring Douglas to Eastcliff on my 84th birthday to check on me and treat my old illnesses. If you don't, just wait and see." People were more selfish as they got older. The older they were, the more afraid they were of death, wishing to live for as long as they could. Barbara didn't want to know about the feud between Kenneth and Douglas. All she hoped for was for Douglas to remain as her personal doctor. With Douglas around, she could probably live until over 90 years old for sure. But without him, she might not even be able to pass this year's hurdle. Kenneth was bummed out by his mother's scornful blame. He wanted to explain himself and complain, but Barbara didn't want to hear any of it. She ordered her demands and immediately ended the call. Exasperated, Kenneth vented his anger by smashing the furniture and breaking things in the room. Finally, he picked up his phone to call Douglas, trying to ask for his forgiveness and beg him to continue treating his mother. However, Douglas' phone was turned off. It made Kenneth even more frustrated. However, he didn't dare to disobey his mother, so he quickly put on his clothes, went out of the house, and drove to Douglas' clinic. The clinic's door was shut tight when he arrived at the entrance. Kenneth grit his teeth in agitation when suddenly he saw two figures walking out of the dark alley not far from him. One of them was limping and looked quite familiar to him. Kenneth quickly hid around the corner to observe them closely. As they were approaching him, he saw that it was a man in his 50s with a young man in his 20s walking together. The young man was leaning on a crutch in one hand and a huge green gasoline drum in the other. The middle-aged and slightly balding man was supporting the limping young man with one hand and also carrying another green gasoline drum in the other. Kenneth recognized the young man. He was being kicked out of the clinic when he had come to seek Douglas treatment today. It seemed that the men were attempting to set fire to Douglas' clinic since Douglas refused his service. The young man was Jason Grant, the guy that had offended Charlie in the hospital and had been thrown out of the window by Orville. The incident had broken his legs, which resulted in his limping. He hated Charlie for what had happened to him. He planned to find Douglas to treat his injuries before going after Charlie to settle the score, and yet Douglas didn't even let him into his clinic. He returned to the hospital and complained to his father, Justin Grant. Agitated, they had bought 2 barrels of gasoline and decided to burn Douglas' clinic down. They planned to set the Serene World Clinic on fire to teach Douglas a lesson, and then find a way to seek revenge from Charlie. At this moment, Kenneth heard Jason ask Justin, "Dad, do you think the old coot lives in the clinic?" "How would I know?" Justin said coldly. "Besides, who cares? If he does live inside, it serves him right to be burned to death. Damn, how dare he be so ignorant to you? Damn it!" Jason cursed in dismay. "Damn it, the old coot doesn't even want to help me. Burning him to death is such a cheap lesson for him." Jason opened the barrel cap and said, "Dad, I think it's better to pour the gasoline in through the rolling shutter so that the gasoline is fully spread inside. Then, when we light the fire from outside, the fire will spread around so rapidly that even the cockroaches won't be spared." Justin nodded and snorted. "Good! Let's burn them to ashes, these sons of bitches!" Although Justin was not among the successful pioneers in Oris Hill, he was the city's #1 when it came to spoiling his son rotten. Their families had only ever had a single male heir for several generations. After giving birth to several daughters, Justin had finally gotten a son, Jason, so he had been pampered and spoiled in every way possible since young. When Jason had been in elementary school, his teacher had punished him by caning his palm once because he was the troublemaker in class, disrupting the classroom's order. Justin had then brought some guys to school and had broken the teacher's right arm, leaving him permanently disabled for life. When Jason was in junior high school, he fought with a boy at school and was defeated. Justin had then hired someone to create a car accident that rendered the boy into a vegetative state. There were countless similar incidents like these throughout Jason's upbringing. In Justin's opinion, the only consequence for anyone who bullied his son was death. Since Douglas didn't want to treat his son's broken legs, he should die. Charlie was the cause of his son being in such a miserable state today. Thus, he should die. Hence, he mustered a plan. He would burn Douglas to death today and kill Charlie according to his planned scheme tomorrow. Just as the father and son were about to pour the gasoline out of the barrel, Kenneth worried that they might truly burn Douglas to death. So he jumped out anxiously and shouted, "Hey, calm down!" The father and son were shocked by the shout. They had thought that no one would be around to notice them at night, however. A man had appeared out of nowhere abruptly. Amidst the surprise, Jason recognized Kenneth and said, "Hey, aren't you the guy who came to see Douglas today? Why? Are you trying to help him?" Kenneth waved his hands anxiously and said, "No way. I don't care if the old dog is alive or dead. That magical pill that he talked about, he takes it around with him all day long. I believe his magical pill can not only heal your legs, but also my disorder. If you guys burn him like this, his magical pill will be destroyed as well." Jason gaped in shock. The guy was right. Why didn't he think about it? Indeed, Douglas had a magical elixir with him that could even cure quadriplegic caused by spinal injuries. The pill would certainly work perfectly on his broken legs. If he killed him in the fire, he would lose the chance to heal his legs, wouldn't he? He was a little hesitant all of a sudden. Kenneth started again. "Guys, I have an idea. Don't burn his clinic first. Let's find a way to kidnap the old dog, snatch the pill from him, and only then kill him." Justin frowned suspiciously. "Huh? Do you have beef with the old dog, too?" "Of course," Kenneth growled indignantly. "He is my arch-enemy. I want to kill him too, but first I must get the magic pill to cure myself." Jason said, "In that case, let's join hands then. We'll kidnap the old dog first, force him to hand over the magic pill, and then we'll kill him and toss him into the sea." "Great," Kenneth nodded. "If so, let's exchange contact details. Find a time tomorrow to further discuss the details." Justin and Jason didn't know that Douglas only had half a magic pill, but Kenneth knew. He knew because he had nearly gotten it from Douglas in the afternoon. He didn't dare to go up against Douglas himself, but if he passed the duty to the ignorant father and son duo, he could sit back and enjoy the fruits of their work with just a few simple tricks. For example, he could first imitate a few pills based on the real thing that he had seen today. Then, after they had kidnapped Douglas, he could search for the authentic pill on Douglas' body and slip the fake pills together. Until then, not only could he cure his impotence, but he could also blame Douglas' death on them. Justin, on the other hand, didn't overthink it. In his opinion, the enemy of his enemy was his friend. Since they had the same enemy, they could be comrade in arms. The more the merrier. Besides, they could divide the risk evenly, so why not? As for the magic pill, he didn't know how much Douglas had, but to him, Douglas had to die regardless because he and his son were very pissed with him right now. Hence, he exchanged phone numbers with Kenneth and agreed to make time for a phone call the next day. Then, he and Jason left the clinic with the gasoline drums in tow. Kenneth was rather complacent about his plan. He quickly drove back to the Wilson family villa, planning to make some dough, add some black paint, and knead out some sphere-shaped dough that imitated the pill. Meanwhile, in another car, Jason asked his father, Justin, "Dad, so what's the plan for tomorrow? Is it still the same as we planned? We lure Charlie out and kill him. Then, we meet with this guy to kill Douglas Simmons together." Justine nodded. "Yes, we kill Charlie first. Then, we get that magic pill from Douglas and heal your legs." "That's awesome!" Jason shrieked excitedly. "If we can get the magic pill, I don't have to be a cripple anymore." Justin smiled. "Son, don't worry. I won't let you limp forever. I'll even trade my legs for you." Then he added, "Let's go home and take a rest. Tomorrow call Elaine and proceed as we planned." "All right, Dad." The next morning, Charlie bought breakfast at home. When Elaine had finished her breakfast, she went out to play cards with her friends. Elaine loved playing cards. Whenever she was free, she would go to her friend's house to play cards. Just as she exited the house and walked toward her friend's place, her phone rang. She took out her phone and was surprised to see that it was Jason. She quickly answered the call. "Hey, Jason, what's the matter?" Ever since Claire had married Charlie, Elaine had only had one thing in mind, and that was how to get her daughter to divorce Charlie and then marry her into a wealthy family. At first, she had wanted her daughter to marry Wendell Jones, but the Jones family had suddenly gone bankrupt overnight. What was even more mysterious was the fact that Wendell and his family had disappeared out of the blue and never appeared in Orris Hill again. Then, she had wanted her daughter to marry Kevin White, but he had been slapped 10,000 times by Orville men while helping her to get her money back from a scam, and he too had disappeared. A few days ago, she wanted her daughter to marry Jason Grant, but after he had been thrown out of the window of her husband's ward, he had disappeared as well. Truth be told, Jason was the best candidate as her daughter's husband at the moment. Although he had brought the crooked Dr. Lynch to treat her husband to no avail, he was a victim of the doctor's scam as well. Thus, Elaine had never really blamed him. On the contrary, Elaine blamed herself for what had happened to Jason. She felt that he shouldn't have received such a harsh treatment since he meant well in the first place. So when she received Jason's call, she was over the moon, but also a little guilty. Jason's earnest voice sounded on the phone. "Auntie, I'm sorry for what happened at the hospital the other day. I was deceived and brought a fake doctor to treat Uncle. I'm very sorry, and I haven't gotten the chance to apologize to you." "Oh," Elaine said. "Hey, Jason, what are you talking about? I have always been very grateful for your kind intentions, and I'm sorry for what happened to you. I should be the one to apologize to you." "No, Auntie, it's my fault for not validating Dr. Lynch's credentials first." Then he added, "So I would like to invite you for lunch someday so that I can apologize to you personally if that's okay with you." Elaine was thrilled and overjoyed by the invitation. Frankly speaking, she didn't feel that Jason was wrong at all in this matter. On the contrary, she felt that Jason was actually one of the victims of the incident. He had even broken his leg because of Charlie the loser. She felt sorry for the innocent man. Moreover, Jason's call made Elaine's impression of him a little better. Just look at him. He was rich, kind, generous, and so respectful toward her. He was an excellent husband for her daughter. If she could just get her daughter to mingle with Jason more often and kick the ignorant Charlie out of her house, her daughter could marry a rich guy soon. More importantly, the Grant family had a convention center where renovation projects would be humongous. If he was with her daughter would get all the projects, wouldn't she? In fact, if she subcontracted the projects to other companies, she could earn a price difference there, couldn't she? This prospect was much better than when she was with Charlie the loser. She concluded that it was extremely hard to find a nice guy like Jason and was determined to seize this opportunity for her daughter. She quickly said, "Oh, Jason, you're too welcome. You don't have to do that." "It's no big deal, Auntie. This is what I should do." Jason heard the enthusiasm in her tone and quickly added, "Also, to express my sincerity, I've also prepared $1 million gift for you." "$1 million gift?" Elaine grinned from ear to ear instantly. Wow, Jason was so kind and generous. $1 million gift. She would be rich. Hence, she hurriedly agreed to the invitation and said, "Jason, let me know the time and place. I'll be there on time." Jason said with a smile, "Auntie, let's meet at the Divine Lounge on Hazel Street. It's the best seafood restaurant in Orris Hill. The time will be noon. See you at the entrance then." "Okay," Elaine answered delightedly. Jason started again. "Auntie, please don't tell Claire about our plan. I'm arranging an apology ceremony for her and I need your help." Elaine replied, "Of course. You young people are romantic all over. Okay, I promise I won't spill the beans to her."